What's going on in the Middle East, I think it's of huge importance right now because Israel attacked Qatar. Qatar is not Lebanon, Syria. It's one of the most important allies of the United States in the Middle East. And the policy they're pursuing in Qatar is somehow the same policy they have been pursuing in Iran, in Yemen, Syria. They tried to kill the we cannot call him the president of Syria, but the guy who's running Syria right now. How do you see the way that Israeli government is behaving? It seems that the attack was totally failed. And here is what the Israeli ambassador to the United States said on Fox News.
Terrorists are on notice. They
And
are going to be eliminated.
Mr. Ambassador, understand that and the history. Obviously, Israel is under attack constantly. In this case, Qatar officials and Hamas leadership is saying that you did not get the targets you were seeking. They are obviously condemning this attack as attacking inside an allied country to the U.S. The U.S. here at the White House expressing concern that it did not advance the goals of the U.S. or Israel. And you have the Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, with very pointed statements in condemnation. So did you get the targets you were seeking?
If we didn't get them this time, we'll get them the next time. Israel under Prime Minister Netanyahu is changing the face of the Middle East. We have degraded Hezbollah, we've degraded Hamas, the Houthis, and Iran, the head of the snake that's leading these proxies in an effort to destroy Israel. When we defeat these proxies of Iran, when we defeat Islamic extremism, and actually that will benefit our neighbors in the region who are moderate and want to live in a state of peace with us. So right now, we may be subject to a little bit of criticism. They'll get over it. And Israel is being changed for the better. The region is being changed for the better as we remove these enemies of peace and these enemies of Western civilization from their ability to implement terrorism.
There are rumors that the Turkish intelligence somehow informed the Hamas leaders and before the attack happening because they were witnessing what's going on with the case of Israel, the movement in Israel. Your take on that, Alastair. Go ahead.
Well, of course, I don't know that. I mean, I don't know what intelligence services passed or didn't pass to Hamas or to Qatar. But I would say that it's quite possible because, of course, any aircraft that is up in the air, particularly when you have sort of British tanker aircraft and you have also then American tanker aircraft for refueling airplanes, and you have Israeli F-15s aircraft in the same area of Doha. I'm sure that will have been picked up and will have rung warning bells somewhere in the region. And it's quite possible that that was passed on. I don't know. But what you said at the outset is really the crux of it, and it's most important. I mean, this marks a huge change because, as you rightly said, Qatar has been at the heart of presenting itself as the sort of regional mediator. Going back, if you recall, it was even the Taliban went to Doha for mediation. But also, Doha has been supporting the forces against Syria earnestly, training them and preparing them and giving them, if you like, support. And it has also been involved very much in also Lebanon against Hezbollah. All of this was under the rubric of, if you like, removing Iran from the region. And to this end, Qatar has also been effectively a facilitator in one way or another of Mossad. So it's been playing a game with everyone, if you like, and up until now, it has succeeded as a sort of golden boy of mediation that it is there. And of course, most of this mediation, including the movement of Hamas to Doha, was an American suggestion, was an American proposal. I know that because I heard that from Assad himself, who said that when Paul came and told him to cut the links with Hamas and with Iran, Assad was told, you have to do that, otherwise, we'll send you back to the Stone Age. That was when Paul was Secretary of State at the time before the Iraq War. And he said, well, what's going to happen then to Hamas? You want me to send them to their deaths? Is that right? To the Israelis to kill them? And Paul said, no, don't you worry. It's all taken care of. They're going to Doha. It's fixed. So clearly that was part of the arrangement, if you like, from that time. So they've been playing this, if you like, this game, profiting from it enormously, both in terms of their standing in America and in Europe, and profiting more directly from it with direct links with some of Trump's family and supporters. So yes, and then suddenly this all comes to an end. And it is the end of a era. There's no doubt of it. They thought, perhaps not unreasonably, that they were immune. They were doing this mediation role for the US and for Europe, and they were working to this end. And then suddenly, boom, our bombs, a lot of them, go off in Doha with the aim of killing the Hamas negotiating team that was there specifically to discuss the latest proposal that ostensibly came from Witkoff via Qatar and other intermediaries, proposing a new form of words or a new formula for ending the Gaza conflict. And instead of which, they were not killed. And my understanding is that there were several people who were killed, but they weren't the negotiating team, or at least most of the negotiating team. We don't have exact details at the moment. So it's obviously had a huge impact because, until now, Gulf states and Saudi Arabia have all relied on the fact that, they host American bases, they act on behalf of the United States, they buy weapons, they give money to the US, they support it in every way like a sort of a good protege of the US, and then suddenly Israel comes in and spoils that whole game. What's its longer term implications? It's not clear, but that's one important conclusion. The second one you hinted at, which is also important, there are no rules, there are no limitations, there are no constraints now on Israel. It goes where it wants, it ignores boundaries, it ignores frontiers, it just goes where it wants, it uses force where it wants, it will decapitate where it can, and that there is nothing that is stopping it, and certainly nothing from Washington that is stopping it on this progress. So yes, it's a new era. We have unlimited war in the Middle East that is now established. They will go anywhere, attack anywhere in order to further Israeli interests. And it comes at the expense of a Gulf state who sort of made its reputation, made its living, and to a certain extent, in this way. And many of them are going to have to recalibrate. It was all right for Gulf states. They were happy enough to sort of just simply say, well, we're cooperating with the United States to contain Iran and all of the proxies of Iran. But now it seems that they are not invulnerable. Now it seems that things could be extended. And obviously they are very and will be very shaken by it. How is it going to affect geopolitics? It's too early to say. I don't think there's any prospects of those Gulf states making a big switch or changing. But I do think it's going to affect how they consider and how they approach, what is coming, which is the likely conflict with Iran, and how they deal with that, and whether they're prepared to be as helpful towards the United States as they were on previous occasions, allowing their airspace to be used and allowing airfields to be used, when the reward for this might be a series of bombs attacking something. I don't mean the Saudi leadership or Qatari leadership, but undoubtedly destabilizing these states, particularly within their own population. I think this is where it will make them frightened, because it pulls away, if you like, the mask about how all of this was done because, this is how you got American support and American protection. And now that mask has been pulled away. And so what will be the internal ramifications in places like Saudi Arabia? How will people react to that? I mean, I'm talking about at the street level, not at the upper level, but at the street level. I think already there is tensions and unhappiness at what's happening in Gaza and the Palestinians. And this will be just another episode of it, I think. So I think that's as far as one can go at this stage about sort of seeing where it'll all lead.
I think we can argue that Israel is in some sort of direct conflict with Turkey in Syria. And because they're hitting the targets in Syria that are related somehow, cooperating on their equipment, and I don't know, the people who are somehow cooperating with the Turkish government in Syria. How do you see the escalation in Syria? And what is the outcome of what has happened to the government in Lebanon? Because anybody in Lebanon could argue. So what is the security guarantee from the United States for us?
Well, I wouldn't trust whatever guarantees you think you have at all. I would say they're very untrustworthy, and you want to watch your back. But in terms of what you were talking about in Syria, I would say that what we see, that Erdogan has been very much presenting Syria, the parts of Syria that were Ottoman, as still part of the Ottoman Velayat of Ottoman lineage. I mean, from Mosul to Aleppo, all of that is claimed by Turkey to have been unfairly taken from it at the end of the Second World War, and it's rightly part of their territory. Now, this is, I mean, how far do we take this seriously? I think we have to realize that Erdogan is in campaigning mode at the moment, because his presidency will expire at the end of this term of office, unless he can persuade Parliament that there is an emergency, in which case then exceptionally it's possible to extend that term in office. But also because there is quite a shift taking place in Turkey, and particularly in the urban areas. You see protests. The young people are no longer, if you like, sort of the pious Sunnis that you would find in other parts of Turkey that were sympathetic to the Muslim Brotherhood and sympathetic to Erdogan. It's shifting. And so there's a lot of arrests taking place as he tries to keep control. And there's a lot of unhappiness about what's happened in Gaza and to the Palestinians in Turkey at the street level. And it's not working. The old formulas that Erdogan had were not working. So to a certain extent, Syria is an important diversion from the problems that he's facing at home. It's an important diversion and a way of sort of showing Turkish nationalism in a way that isn't so offensive, if you like, to some of the young inhabitants of Istanbul and others that have been slipping away from his grip and slipping away actually from the whole Islamic formula that he's produced, the predominantly Muslim Brotherhood type of Islam that he has embraced, to a slightly different type of Islam, more in tune, if you like, with the sort of regional sense of national liberation, anti-colonialism, and these elements, which don't, I feel like, fit very well with the Muslim Brotherhood, more rigid view of Sunni Islam. So I think he wants to make a show. The more territory to be tough and taking territory in Syria will generate headlines, good headlines, sort of, dealing with the Kurds will cause complications, of course, in Turkey too, but, this is all good stuff for Erdogan to show that he's taking back historic parts of Turkey. Israel, by contrast, is absolutely determined not to let Turkey dominate in Syria, not to let it militarily dominate, not to let it establish with the Druze an autonomy in one part and with the Kurds in the northeast, and to create a sort of corridor for Turkey going from Al-Tanaf right through Sweda up towards the Iranian border, which of course NATO would like to see happening. And Israel is intent on doing that, but Turkey equally doesn't want it. But Israel is getting further and further and almost encircling Damascus. The leader in Damascus barely can leave the presidential palace. His writ doesn't go much further than that. Yes, there are gangs that say they're in accord with him, aligned with him, but he does not really have control over those people. They act on their own interests, and often their interests are about stealing money and stealing possessions, as well as settling scores with Alawites and with Shia and with Christians, etc.